Hello, you might have heard, welcome to breakfast by the way, you might have heard of the Sheik Jarrah dispute in Jerusalem at the moment. Sheik Jarrah is the Palestinian term, and if you were to go to, if you were to look for the Israeli name, it would be Shimon hat Zadik. And at the heart of this problem is a man who owns an organization called Nahalat Shimon. And this man is an unnamed American. He's never been identified. The Nahalat Shimon organization bought up the original pre-1948, that's before Israel was founded. It bought up this land, it bought up the rights to this land from two Jewish families. And the Israeli government insists that this is a land dispute and not something that it should get involved in personally. And it comes back to court today. Now, it's much more complex, and you'll remember that at the beginning of Ramadan, this dispute led to the Temple riot and to Hamas rockets being fired into Israel, and actually the possibility of serious conflict. When you look at the problem, the paperwork, again, is not as simple as it appears. So although you've got the Nahalat Shimon organization buying up land which seems to have been owned by two Jewish families, it's not at all that straightforward. You see, Israel agreed, when it was established, Israel agreed to the Jordanian UNRWA agreements. And it also agreed to uphold the principles set up during the British Mandate before the State of Israel was established, that refugees had rights to the land that they were settled on. The problem is, all that documentation which was going through to give these people rights to that land, which was controlled at the time by Jordan, was thrown into disarray in 1967 during the Six-Day War. And these documents were never properly completed. So although the intention was clear that the families who had fled from Haifa and Jaffa when the State of Israel was originally declared in 1948 and were then settled in East Jerusalem, although the intention was very clear that Jordan was going to grant these people land rights to the place where they had their homes, the documentation was never completed. And today, 58 people, including 17 children, face a possible future where they will be evicted. And this will have much wider implications. It will set a precedent. Not only for you have to make a distinction between those settlements which seem to be completely illegal, like for example, there's a Bedouin settlement which was built clearly illegally, and even that's supposed to be demolished. But at the moment, that isn't happening. That's great. That's very positive news. But there are other communities, like the Al Bustan community, where there's 119 families, the Wadi Jusul community, where there's 84 families, and the Batan Al Hawa community, where there's 700 families. If the Sheik Jarrah dispute goes ahead, and Sheik Jarrah, the people in Sheik Jarrah are told to leave, then this sets a precedent for those other families. But we can trace the problem back to before 1972, when Nahalat Shimon filed the paperwork for possession, and he was speared on by the idea of a Greater Jerusalem, which was promoted by the Prime Minister at the time, Golda Meir. And she had set up a committee to promote this idea called the Gavni Committee. And then Ariel Sharon in 1990 followed this idea up. I'm sorry, I'm choking at the idea of breakfast, I think. So all of this looks very bad. On the positive side, for the Sheik Jarrah people, is the fact that their lawyers seem to have found a very early Ottoman document which suggests that the land actually belonged to the Palestinian families, or to Palestinian families who lived there before the land was bought by the two Jewish families who then sold it on to Nahalat Shimon. So it's complex. One incredibly positive sign is that the new Prime Minister, unlike his predecessor, seems to be conciliatory. And he has a meeting in Washington in August this month, later this month, and the signs are that even if the court were to rule against the families in Sheik Jarrah, he would not get behind the police and action their eviction. So that is positive, but the most positive ruling, the most positive outcome for today would be for the courts to find for the Sheik Jarrah families. Fingers crossed. There, very complicated dispute going on.